want to share with you some of the really unique features of the KyüBell that I enjoy. Now, everything I'm going to share is really built around the balance. The balance does some wonderful things. And by balance, I mean the position, the distance apart that the handles are, that allows some really cool things to happen. So this is part one. Part one, I'm going to talk about some uses that allow you to lift in movements that might otherwise cause you discomfort, tightness, or even that dreaded P word, okay? So why does that happen? Well, one of the easiest things to talk about and demonstrate is this wonderful rack position. You can achieve this with a kettlebell, right? And so this rack position allows for great stacking of the joints. So we've got the weight, the actual load is sitting below this structure and starts with stacking those joints a little bit better. With a kettlebell though, the load is so offset, the balance is not right. So it ends up becoming really a wrist ownership exercise to ever achieve those benefits. So the rack position is just one, but you may find that that's quite nice. Another one would be, hey, I'm gonna do a side lateral, but I've got elbow pain. You might find a reduction in some of those things, just as I was talking about, because we're putting the load in many different ways off of the wrist, which is going to affect the extensor and flexor relationships into the elbow. Might also affect the shoulder. Now where it really gets cool is when you start playing with some of the hanging positions, like this, in front of your shoulders. My favorite, you'll see me, you've seen this in a video with Juji and myself and a few others where I've shown people that have pain or problems, I've used the dreaded P word, let's say discomfort, tightness, whatever, in doing a fly movement. For me, it's my elbows because I've had surgery on both of them, lots of trauma around them, a lot of people it's around the shoulder, and you'll see it just disappears. And you'll see the same thing happen here. So what happens when we start getting, when we change the loading patterns around joints and we start affecting the prime mover and the stabilizer relationships, we're also affecting the neurological inputs into the brain, and we can actually address some of the things that are causing threat signals as well and turn some of those off. So there's so many things that happen when we start treating and using not only load for training, but also how the load is applied in the neurological inputs into the system that it does. This is what the transformer bar does, what the Cadillac bar does, certain ways of using the trap bar. They're all built around the same philosophy, but it's pretty crazy what happens when you start playing with some of those things. So let's talk about some of the unique things that I like about the KyüBell. Part two, all right? Guess what? It's all about the balance, all right? So one of the things I really like about this, the balance allows us, because of the distance apart, the grip material and diameter of handles allows us to actually control the KyüBell in various positions. What does that do? That allows us to change the freaking strength curve of the exercise. So doing a lateral raise, everybody knows if you're doing dumbbell lateral raises, you're really only training up here. So what do? We do cables and we mount it off onto a distance. We take and we lean against a wall to initiate it sooner. All of these movements are trying to get that force vector to kick in that lower part of the movement. Well, I can, boom, move the distance further away from my shoulder, and I've actually made this harder in this range, the same here, but I can do all sorts of things in that manner with it. So really cool. I can do it with curls. I've seen this, I've demonstrated this with a couple pro bodybuilders and destroyed them on the biceps because they're not used to being loaded in that range, that you're not able to do that without a piece of equipment. So we can actually change the force curve, which is phenomenal. But we can also do things, now here's the fun part, try that, like something where you'd normally lean against the wall. Let's ramp it even further. So I'm gonna hold this in a position. I could go full here, like that's what I'd do if I did my side. But if I'm gonna lean against the wall here, I may lay it out even further. This 20-pound right now, wait, I mean, it is lit. Oh, you can see me, just a few reps, 20 pounds. I'm struggling already. I mean, it is crazy different the loading and fatigue that I can accumulate with doing that, all right? And I can play around with it, so I can start there till I go to failure. I can go here, which actually makes it harder at the top, but easier at the bottom, and then I can throw some momentum in and overload. Boom, I can go to failure by quickly changing this and keep doing a mechanical drop set, all right? This ties into what I love that's unique about the KyüBell Part 3, all right? This is our ability to affect time under tension in ways that you would never do before. So we're talking about being able to do mechanical drop sets. I'm doing a delt raise right now, but you could literally do that with any movement. So I can do sometimes up to 5 drop sets, never setting the weight down, having to pick up a lighter dumbbell, but just slowly reduce the load until, boom, I'm shot, okay? This allows me to tether the exercise together with multiple exercises. Supersets, giant sets. But again, maximizing the time under tension because I never have a break. Because now with this 20-pound, I could switch to an exercise that requires more load for me to get a movement, or to one that requires less just by changing the position in my hand. And so I could loop these together, never stopping. It's really freaking wild. And play around with it. One of my favorite ways to do that is actually do something that also relies heavy on time under tension, really ramping up the effects and also the metabolic effects. Because again, think about supersets and giant sets with no time off. The metabolic effect is pretty huge. Loop that in with like blood flow restriction. You'll see me doing that quite a bit. Whoa, ramps that stuff through the roof. So to sum it up, all I can say is play around with positions. Don't just rely on the really straightforward ones, like, you know, grabbing through in this center mass position, the standard long lever bottoms up, or the rack position. These are built to be able to manipulate this load in so many different arenas, and allows you to do things that you'd never do before. Literally manipulating the force curve of a movement, playing with your time under tension. It's going to affect your metabolic training, your hypertrophy, all these sorts of things. And also the way that we load those joints, not just thinking about the biomechanics of what's happening from stacking those joints, getting things into better position, but the fact that we can actually create change through neurological input changes to the system with it. And you will see it. If you have issues, and I'll throw out that big P word, pain, discomfort, tightness, play around with different stuff and you'll be surprised. You can more than likely do movements that you could never do before, again, and feel good. Give it a run. Let me know what you think.